This is the Nomadic Traveler Podcast. Welcome to Nomadic Traveler Podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and our lovely and wonderful co-host is here as always, Miss Nicole.
Hey guys, how's it going?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. Feeling good today.
What are we doing today?
Today we are talking to Amanda, who is a traveler that has recently went to Cuba.
Yes.
I know.
So today we are going 106 miles from the coast of Key West to Havana, Cuba.
Ooh, Havana.
Havana, go bananas. What is it, something like that?
Yeah. You guys are not going to want to miss this episode. I learned so much from this episode. It is amazing.
I want to go to Cuba now.
Do you? Okay.
I've always wanted to go to Cuba though, so it's not really any different, but
well, and if you're ever thinking about going even in like the distant, like long ways away, you want to listen to this episode. Because she's going to give you some good advice about when and how to go.
Yeah. You don't want to get locked out of this travel opportunity.
Yeah.
Because you can still go, despite what you may have heard on the news. And we're going to give you tips on how to go and what you need to do and what you need to say and how you need to act and what kind of money you need to bring and
where to go
and where to go
what
and
to see.
And the places to eat and places to stay. And we got it all.
Yeah. She is wonderful. You guys are going to love it.
So yeah, so this episode is amazing. We're going to get on with Miss Amanda coming up next. All right, we'd like to welcome Amanda to the show today. How are you today, Amanda?
Hey, I'm doing good, guys. Doing good. Happy to be here.
And Amanda's going to talk to us about Cuba.
Yes.
You just went recently? How recently did you go?
I went roughly 3 months ago. It was the end of October. I went for my birthday, and my birthday is the day after Halloween. So we were there over a weekend, over that Halloween going into November weekend from Thursday through Monday.
Very cool. So this is pretty current then. So, and you're an American citizen, right?
Correct.
So
yes.
Americans can still go to Cuba?
They can. So even between when I went and now, a couple of things have changed, but not too much. When I went, you were able to fly to, I believe, more places than Havana. There were still certain areas you couldn't go to. But now I just recently checked and you can only fly into Havana from about 4 major airports here in the States. And then there's some items that you need in preparation to go to Cuba before you even, get on the plane. And you get to your, destination where you do ship out of, because even if you fly out from I'm in Texas, if you fly out of Texas, I can't go straight to Cuba. I have to go through one of their destination airports. And then at my destination airport, I have to get a visa in order to go to Cuba if I haven't purchased it already.
So that's why you have to fly through, say, Fort Lauderdale or something, because they want to get all your credentials in order?
Exactly. So they have ticketing booths for you at Fort Lauderdale. It's Fort Lauderdale, I think Orlando, New York, and Boston right now that service the flights to Havana. And you can choose as an American citizen to purchase your items through a third party before you even get to those final destination airports, but you pay a little bit more. Okay. You're going to pay a little bit more to somebody, whether it's the airline or a third party. But you could do it online and then hope that you get your documents beforehand if you plan it early enough, if they ship it to you, or you can get it at the ticketing gate. So we flew through JetBlue, and when we got to the Fort Lauderdale airport, we went up to the ticketing booth and we were able to get our Cuban tourist visas at the ticketing booth for about $50 a person. And you simply take the paper with you on the plane.
That's not too bad.
Which would you suggest for our listeners? So does it take a lot of time at the airport? Do you suggest doing it ahead of time if you can?
I think it's really up to you. I felt more comfortable and confident doing it with somebody like a rep at the airport, just in case I clicked the wrong thing or accidentally mismarked something. They could tell me right then and there, no, change it, instead of filling it out online and never having that. So the assurance is really what sold me on doing it there in front of somebody. It's really up to you and your preference and how far ahead you're booking the travel. We did ours probably like a month and a half booking. And I kept looking online, like, is it worth me paying a little bit more to get it processed by a third party and get it shipped to me? And at the end of the day, it was just my comfort that made me do it at the airport. But a little bit about that Cuban visa, just for people who are wanting to go, because this is still in place. So OFAC, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, is the one that dictates what you need to go to Cuba as an American citizen. Cuban government and the Cubans in general there at the airport are not really like, as far as what we saw, not really looking for these things so heavily as they are in the United States, because it's one directional.
Yeah.
So when you get your visa, you have to choose between a set list of different things for reasons why you're going to Cuba. And there's things like you're on official business because you're a government ambassador, or you're there for journalism. You're there for research, educational activities, religious activities, for a performance, support for the Cuban people, a humanitarian project, if you're exporting, importing, or any other authorized trade or like transaction. And what we found when we were getting ready to go is that most people who went to Cuba chose number 8 reason, which is support for the Cuban people. And that's what we also selected on our list when we got our visas.
Okay. So what kind of support are you providing to the Cuban people then?
So that's a great question, right? Because you can support people in so many different ways.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's why that's the most popular, is because it's one of the most vague. So support for the Cuban people could be staying at a hostel there run by a Cuban family. It could be booking a tour, which is what we saw a lot of bloggers and people doing too. So we decided, we're going to book a tour, because a blogger had said booking a tour is the easiest thing to do. You just take your paper with you and show them you're supporting the Cuban people because you've paid money to go on a tour there. So that's what we chose to do. But you could also, in a way, kind of squeeze in a couple of these categories, like, well, I'm supporting the Cuban people because I'm going on a humanitarian aid, but you still choose it under the umbrella of supporting the Cuban people.
So that would be better than, say, for us to try to get like some kind of a press thing because we have a podcast or something like that.
Right. And that's a great question, because for journalistic activity, we were like, well, what if we go and document it? And I think that line is it's not as loose as it is there as it is for us.
Okay.
When it comes to journalism in Cuba, they are very particular about what kind of information they want to disseminate when it comes to the Cuban people, how they work, how they live. And we had also heard that before you go, when you're taking photos with people, you probably want to ask them if you can share it, because a lot of people don't like to be taken photos of. We didn't feel that when we got there, but we did hear that from friends and people who had gone prior to any restrictions with the U.S. travel. So we were just very hyper aware of asking people to take photos, or of being in places with people where we were taking photos. Nobody felt like it was an intrusion, though.
So the government didn't like you taking pictures of people, or the people themselves did not like you taking pictures of them?
I think there's a rumor mill from the government that makes you feel people are afraid to take pictures with
Gotcha.
you. But when you get there, you realize the people are so open, and they will most definitely take pictures with you, if you approach them friendly, of course. But there was nobody there who shied away from photos.
Okay.
Very cool. What does the safety feel like there, being in that country as an American? How do you feel?
I felt very safe. So I think when I travel, I always have a really high guard up, because I've been to different places. I've been in bad situations because I didn't prepare. I wasn't aware of my surroundings. So when I go and I travel to places, me and my boyfriend are always on the lookout for potentially harmful scenarios, or, places we don't want to go to because it feels like it could be dangerous. And we did not feel that at all in Cuba. We could walk around at night or in the morning, pretty much any time of day. There's traffic cams on every corner. I know we have traffic cams here in the States to kind of stop you from doing the red light, thing. But there, we were told that the Cuban government, or the tourist part of it at least, monitors those cameras, and nobody really does anything to you in a lot of tourist areas, because they know that there's always surveillance. And that was a little scary, but also reassuring. We honestly felt very, very safe walking around, and everybody there was just so friendly.
So they're trying to keep you safe as a tourist then?
Absolutely. And I think they know that tourism brings them a lot of valuable dollars in terms of revenue for people. So nobody wants to mess up, tourists coming over to the United States.
That's one of the only ways they have outside money coming into the country, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When tourists come over from the United States, or I think there were a lot of Europeans and also Asians there when we were there, that is a big part of their product. They get a lot of their goods that they manufacture there sold off to tourists who then take it back to their countries and tell another tourist who come and then purchase more products. So they definitely rely on that tourism market.
So that brings up another good point. So can I buy things there and bring them back, such as the coveted Cuban cigar? Can you buy those and bring them back? Or is that a big no-no? Will you get arrested coming back into the country? What's the deal with that?
No, so you can definitely buy them. We actually bought a box ourselves. You can go to a couple of different places to purchase them. Of course, you can buy them at the airports or the more touristy places, the market areas, or even Vinales, which is, I believe, a half a day's journey. We didn't actually go out there, but it's the area where they manufacture the cigars, and the people are actually folding the leaves and making them and producing them. So you can go to these, big metro areas and get a box of cigars for a couple of $100s. Or what we did is we happened to be there the last weekend of the month, and the government had just recently allowed people who work in the factories to join almost like what we would consider a union here. Mm-hmm. And they were part of a cooperativa. And if you were part of the cooperativa, you were able to take excess goods from the factories that you worked at and sell them on your own accord so that you would have more income in your household, but only the last weekend of the month. So we happened to be there at the right time. And we met a man from the cooperativa while we were walking around Old Havana who explained to us what kind of cigars he had. It happened that it fit what we were looking for. So we ended up getting away with a box of Roberson cigars I wish I had the box in front of me, of these Roberson short cigars. And I think the box was like $100 tops. And I know people would definitely pay maybe twice that. When we came back in the United States, all we needed to have on that box, and what we were told by the gentleman who sold it to us, is it just needed to have this official seal that showed that you purchased it from an official place or from an official seller. And he put the seal on the box. He said, don't open this. Make sure that you show this seal when you're leaving the country and when you're getting into your country. And nobody in Cuba actually looked for that seal, surprisingly. But in the United States, they did when we got through customs. And it had not been opened. So it showed the customs agent that it had been purchased officially and legally, and nothing had been tampered with during the duration of the flight or since we had purchased it.
So the official seal worked.
Yeah, the official seal worked. And it's definitely something you can't recreate, because we looked at that seal for a while thinking, how would somebody potentially use this to get other things across when they're traveling? But it is a seal that was just it looked very hard to counterfeit.
So is it only on cigars, or is it on anything that you bring in?
It's definitely on cigars, and I think small boxed goods might have it as well, because it has to cover like an edge, and it's very particular. It has to be on a certain edge. It couldn't be just anywhere on the box. It had to be on like the bottom left or right edge, covering a certain amount and exactly a certain way. So if an official sees it on a different edge, or, kind of like half-ass put on there, they will probably be more suspicious about that box.
Is there like any type of like at the airport when you come back, do they make you say like how much money that you've spent and versus how much goods you're bringing back? Is there anything to stop people from going and buying goods and bringing them back to sell?
There is nothing at the airport that documents that in Cuba, but on the way back, of course, the American airline will give you the documents that say, what are you claiming? What are you going to show customs that you have actually brought over? So that document is there, just like you would come back from any other country and enter the US. You'd have to put down what you're bringing back, if you plan on trading it, if you plan on selling it, what the value of it is. And then unfortunately, we didn't purchase things to resell. We bought the box of cigars for us, and we bought a couple of little knickknacks. The knickknacks didn't have any seals on it because it was just 2 dolls and I think a book and a couple of movies that were like Cuban-based movies that we probably would never find anywhere else or get imported. So that probably amounted to less than $300 in goods, and that was not a red flag for customs.
Very cool.
Is there a limit on the number of boxes of cigars you can bring back? Did you see anything like that?
No. The gentleman who sold it to us told us that nobody is enforcing a limit. I think that if you naturally come across with 5 or 10 boxes, you might probably get questioned a little bit more. But it's not like, well, you can only have one box per person, or you can only have one box per person here or there. Nobody had a quota like that.
Did they have a limit on anything that you could bring into the country?
No, we did not have anything rationed or anything we needed to get rid of. There was nothing like that either.
Very cool. Speaking of like buying things and spending money, how does like the exchange of money work there, and what is the cost to doing that?
Yeah, so Cuba is very interesting because, like I mentioned, OFAC, that Office of Foreign Asset Controls, oversees everything that goes into Cuba and how you get there, but they also dictate how you purchase things. So when you go to Cuba as an American traveler, you have to bring cash. You can't use your debit cards because it's not allowed by OFAC. You cannot do business there with your electronic debit cards and expect it to go through. They just will not work. So before you head out to Cuba, have enough cash and kind of predict your expenses, even if you have to overshoot it a little bit, so that you have enough cash to last you during your time there. So for us, we took cash to last 4 days. We had kind of planned, well, we're going to go on a tour. We'll probably eat a couple of times a day. We'll probably have a couple of cab drives that we'll need to make each day during our trip. And we're walkers, so we definitely decrease that cab cost. But if you are definitely like a mobile person and you do not want to walk, get a little bit more in your cab spend. That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
So when you get there, your American dollar, you exchange it either at the airport before you leave, because it is kind of a little drive into Cuba proper. You're on the outskirts a little bit, maybe by 10 or 15 minutes. Okay. It would be pretty hard to find a place that exchanges money in Cuba, in the city, because when we walked around and we were trying to find people to even like give us change, we did not have the experience of it being easy to change your money. So I would definitely do it at the airport. Or if you happen to know somebody or have family there, go to your family, your friends of family, and see if they will help you trade money with what they actually have. Because fortunately, there was a lady who traveled before us who told us your taxi driver will probably give you a better exchange rate than they will at the airport. And we took advantage of that, because the airport, it is supposed to be 1 for 1. A Cuban dollar or a Cuban convertible peso, the CUC is what they call it, for an American dollar. But the exchange rates at the airport, of course, you lose money. You lose like $20 to $30 just trading money at the airport. And if you trade it with somebody who's local, they will actually get more money out of it too, because there's 2 monetary values in Cuba. There's the CUC, which is the Cuban convertible peso, and it's used for pretty much all consumer goods there. And then there's the CUP, CUP, which is the Cuban peso, and that's what the locals, the people of Cuba, actually get paid in and typically do business in. So I'm not sure how they figure out so quickly what their conversions are when they're trading between the two, but they just know. So you always, as a traveler, want to make sure you have the CUC, the CUC, not the CUP, because we actually ended up buying some stuff like tamales on the street from a vendor, and he gave us back money in CUP and we didn't notice it. And it's actually a lot less than the CUC. It's like almost 25 times less than the CUC. He gave us a 50, which I actually still have as a collectible item for us since we can't use it anywhere. And it amounts to maybe $2 American, when he should have given us a lot more change. So just be really careful about that when you're exchanging money. You don't want the people's currency. You can get a good exchange rate at the airport, but you will lose some money unless you know somebody locally or you trust your cab driver. So those are the ways that you can trade some money around. You just have to be cautious.
So I had read that it's illegal for you to take money out of Cuba. So are you a fugitive?
Yeah. No, I'm not a fugitive. Technically, I wasn't even supposed to have this money. It came to me by accident.
Did you change everything back in before you went back? Any remaining money that you had, or?
Well, fortunately, we only left with literally this coupe that we accidentally got traded in the street. Yeah. So we didn't really have any money left over that we needed to change besides like coins, and nobody's going to take those. So those all became little collector's items for us.
Yeah. I like to do that when I go traveling too. If I go overseas, I want to get the money so I can bring it back and have some of
Yeah.
it.
And some money, I feel like the US is so poor when it comes to how we display our money because all these other countries have money by color and by size for denominations. And here in the US, it's one size, one color. And it's like, blah, make
Right?
it.
Right.
Right. What what's a good budget for people? I know you said to make sure that you budget well because you can only have cash. What might be a good budget for, like, say, a 4-day trip?
$10,000.
Like, if people don't know, like,
Sure.
how much is a
So
cab ride? Yeah.
yeah, everybody's income is vastly different, I'm sure. And there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people who are traveling on a budget. So just depending on what financial lane you're in, don't exert yourself too much when you're trying to think about how much to bring. You just want to make sure that you give yourself cushion. So if you're the kind of person who spends a lot, buys a lot of souvenirs, maybe up your budget by $200, $200, because things are so incredibly cheap there that you could get so much. You could even buy a new bag there and put all those items that you're buying in it. I would definitely recommend, like for me, I could spend more if I wanted to, but I just prefer to be frugal. So for each day, I think we maybe spent like less than $100 for sure a day. So
awesome.
altogether, $500 for a 4-day vacation in Cuba would take you really far, depending on where you get your money exchanged, of course. But $500 like oversaw the whole weekend for us. And we came back with some American cash that we hadn't even changed yet.
So the taxi cab driver is definitely the way to go, though, if you want to get money.
I definitely recommend it. I would not have recommended it or even done it had another person who went there not told me that she had done that.
Yeah.
I would have as a scam or skeptical, but it does really help the Cuban people get a better exchange rate and you get a better exchange rate. So I feel like it's reciprocal. And they end up being a really good taxi cab driver for you.
I bet.
If they weren't already. And they're definitely like, oh, just call me tomorrow. I'll take you wherever you want to go. If you need to change more, we'll change more. So you kind of have a good confidant.
Speaking a little bit more about money, like how much was like your hotel stay there then?
Yeah, so I'm just so surprised and shocked by how cheap everything was. The hotel stay for the 4 days all together was like $150, with tax and everything included. And the only thing we paid for separately during the hotel stay was breakfast if we chose to eat breakfast each morning. And it was $5 a person. And you got a pretty good serving of things. You'd be full the majority of the day. You'd have like your eggs, your fresh fruit, coffee, juice, bread. It was just a really nice, well-balanced breakfast. Outside of that, the hotel did offer Wi-Fi cards. That's a little different story, but we did purchase Wi-Fi cards while we were there too, because Cuba does not have public Wi-Fi the way that we're used to here in the States. So you have to purchase a Wi-Fi card in order to get access to the web, to Instagram, to Facebook, to your friends and family. Besides that, your phone pretty much is in a dead zone.
So the Wi-Fi is provided by the government then, or, how does that work?
So the cards that we purchased were purchased by, it's kind of like the pyramid idea.
It's a
The
pyramid
cards
scheme.
we were purchased by the lady of the house who went out and purchased them from someone else who we're not sure who it was,
Okay.
but they are official Wi-Fi cards with like passwords and codes on them that are manufactured there. So I'm sure the government has a hand in it. They probably regulate a lot of what goes out when and how much, and the cards will last you an hour. So when we purchased the card, I'm sure that you could have raised this rate if you wanted to. If I was the house lady, she gave it to us for $10. I'm sure that there's probably times where somebody would buy a card for $20 if there were really a need for Wi-Fi. So we purchased a Wi-Fi card every day we were there for an hour. And what it turned out to be was when we both got on that Wi-Fi card, 30 minutes, because now two people are sharing an hour. So I definitely recommend a card per person if you are, very invested in your social media and your phone. If you're good without your phone and you just want that kind of like I'm off the grid life, Cuba's perfect for you. You will never have to buy a Wi-Fi card.
So you can use one card and you guys can both sign in at the same time and you can both pull off that same card then?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Very cool. Can you use like any type of roaming from your service or anything like that?
You can, because I thought I was in a bad area with this. I thought I was on a card at one point during our stay. It turns out I wasn't. And I saw the Wi-Fi bars on my phone and I thought, oh my God, I'm on Wi-Fi. Someone has to be using a card that I got tapped into here in the hotel or here in like our house. And I wasn't. I got a notice from my provider in a couple of hours saying, hey, you reached your roaming fee of XYZ, or you reached your roaming limit. And in my head, I'm like, no, I didn't. I didn't even have it on. I was on a card. So you could definitely rack up the roaming charges, but it's just it's very difficult to even get service there. Even when I did try to have roaming on at the very beginning, I can go without Wi-Fi. I'll just turn roaming on. I still couldn't get good service. It's really that Wi-Fi card that helps you get the service you're looking for.
So that's kind of a necessity then.
It is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So a big thing to budget for your trip to do.
For sure.
So depending on how much you're on your phone and how much you need internet, yeah, definitely put aside some budget for that. And we didn't look at the airport to see if anybody sold cards in bulk there. If I could do it again, I would definitely look at the airport and see if I could just buy some out the gate, because we relied on everyone else.
Well, I was going to ask you that too. Can you buy more than an hour at a time, or is it only 1 hour at a time?
Well, she probably could have sold us more cards, but because of how she got them, and I'm sure other people wanted cards too, there was no way for us to get around that. It was just, you get one card. When I get more, I'll come back with more, because other people also wanted cards as well.
So, but you didn't see any like 4-hour cards or anything like that?
No. I didn't see any 4-hour cards.
Okay.
Well, we were only given the ones from our hotel or from our house lady, and that was just 1-hour card increments.
Okay.
And where did you book your hotel through, or your home through?
So I booked it through booking.com. We had looked at Airbnb as well, and we had done Airbnb internationally in Europe because we were so experienced with it here in the States. We thought it's going to be perfect. We're going to get to stay in fancy places in Europe. And then after that experience, we thought we do not want to do Airbnb internationally anymore, because there's a lot of hard things you have to get through when you're not able to get in on time, when you have issues checking in, when you can't find something or need your host help. And even communicating sometimes with a language barrier is hard. Knowing that going into Cuba, all I could think was, okay, we've already established there's not going to be a good Wi-Fi or internet phone connection. And if something happens and we can't get in, how are we going to contact our host? And so that just shook me up a little bit. And I thought, we're going to do like a hostel or a house hotel or just a regular hotel. And we're going to arrange everything through them, because they'll do shuttle service for you. They'll have somebody 24/7 at the house to help you with finding things or hailing cabs. So, it's a little bit more secure, and you have somebody to talk to face to face rather than trying to find your host. On that note, there are some places that are blacklisted where you cannot book a room and board. And OFAC also has a list of those. If you were just to type in online, Cuban hotels blacklisted, Cuban hotels OFAC. They will tell you which ones you can and cannot stay at as an American citizen and in what cities. You cannot spend money there. You cannot give anything to them that is, income for them, because you're from America and they don't want to support those establishments.
Okay.
So do you think if you would have went like maybe through Airbnb or a different source that they would have also been able to offer the Wi-Fi cards? Or do you think that was something that seemed like specific to the person that you stayed with?
I feel like I would not have gotten a Wi-Fi card if I stayed at an Airbnb, because there would have been nobody for me to get it from.
Yeah.
We were lucky that we had a lady of the house who went out and grabbed stuff for the house, and she happened to know where to get Wi-Fi cards. It wasn't like we were advertised before we went there. And by the way, this hotel also comes with Wi-Fi cards. We didn't have anything like that in the disclosures.
Very cool.
I did see, we were looking around at some hotels before we got on the call with you, and some of them did say that in the last month or something, the government has allowed them to offer Wi-Fi at the hotels. Have you heard anything about that?
So I did see a couple that said like Wi-Fi is in the lobby, but ours also had Wi-Fi in the lobby as far as the disclaimer went. And what it turned out to be was it's Wi-Fi in the lobby, but you have to have the card in order to get on the Wi-Fi in the lobby.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
does that mean you can't use the cards like in your room? You can only use the cards in the lobby?
It's like being away from the router in your house. The farther you are away from it, the worse the signal is. So for us, it was best to use it closer to the lobby area where the Wi-Fi signal was coming from. When we got to the room, it was just slow. And we're like, okay, we can't do 30 minutes of slow loading. So we're going to go and sit by this Wi-Fi signal and let it load faster. And that's kind of how I would think about it. If it tells you free Wi-Fi in the lobby, expect you're going to need a Wi-Fi card.
Gotcha.
That makes sense. Very true. And so I know you talked about like booking a tour as a way to support the Cuban people. Did you guys do any tours while you were there?
We did. So we booked a tour in order for us to show support for the Cuban people. In case anyone asked, we had that in our back pocket. And we did a Religion of the Cuban People tour. And it was one of the best tours I've been on. And we've been on a couple. We've been on some really epic ones just due to like architecture or things we saw. But this one was special to us because it was attached to art, people, and religion all together. So we did a walking Religion of Cuban People tour on this street called Callejón de Jamel. And it was a little alleyway is what it translates to, in the middle of a neighborhood literally a couple of blocks away from the port. So you get like this fresh ocean breeze. You're in an alleyway with a lot of colorful art drawings and sculptures that look really like industrial. And you're just around a lot of people who love that area, who love art, and who are normally part of the Santeria religion, which is what we learned about. So a lot of the Cuban people there, according to our tourists, pre-revolutionary Cuba, were colonized. They had a heavy Christianity influence, and they took a lot of the Christian idols and they turned them into their own religion, like many, populations do when they are proselytized by another religion. They'll take those icons, they'll turn them into something that is meaningful to them. So you do see like some crosses, you see some colors that you're familiar with if you are familiar with Christianity or you've practiced Christianity and grown up in that area, but they don't mean what you think they mean there. You learn about all of their different gods, and when you become part of that Santeria faith, what it means traditionally for Cubans, how you keep an altar for your god or for your specific path through Santeria in your house, and you arrange it, you keep it until, you grow old. You're in charge of that altar. There's different pieces you have to put on your altar, different colors. There's different ceremonies that you have to partake in, and you'll see a lot of people walking around who are practicing Santeria. And a lot of times there's like a bad juju, like it's almost like voodoo in the Caribbean if you're Santeria, but it's very much, faith-based. There's gods that you pray to, there's gods that you worship, there's traditions you do like any other religion. And one of the things that helps you get into this faith is for 1 year you have to wear white. So you'll see a lot of people walking around wearing nothing but white head to toe, and they are converting. They're going to be the new neophytes that next year. Luckily, when we were on that tour, we got to see a lot of art in that area. The alleyway that we were in was next to a big apartment building, and on the side of the apartment building, there's an enormous mural that's painted along the entire wall. The artist who painted that lives in that building. So we got to meet him, see his own art, the way that he sees the gods of the Santeria faith. We got to see the inside of his house and how he decorates it, and his altars and his son's altars. And I mean, every room had a special area for these faith-based altars, and they were so well kept and so well preserved. It's almost like having, you're a sports fan and you finally got the jersey for somebody you love. So you're going to go put it in that crystal or that glass case, and you're not going to touch it, and you're going to keep it clean forever, but it's for your religion. So that is very much how it is there. And the people were so friendly in that alleyway. One guy even came up and tried to give my boyfriend a cigar, but it didn't have, remember I talked about that seal on the box?
Yeah.
The cigar I tried to give him didn't have a Cuban seal on it. And it's like a little paper that gets put on the cigar leaves that, you see it. It almost looks like a little ribbon that would be on the cigar. This one didn't have it. So it means that it wasn't made by somebody in the factory. And we were like, okay, maybe not that cigar, but thank you. We appreciate it.
So even though it kind of came from Christianity, it doesn't have anything to do with like Jesus Christ or Mary or anything like that.
No, it's very, I think the term for it in terms of academia is like animism. It's very close to nature. You get a lot of these kind of like earthy vibes from the gods there. So you have like a god of the river, you have a god of metallurgy and industry, you have a god who's tied to like natural forces are really what's at play. And when you convert and you're coming into the religion, you see somebody who's kind of like a mentor for you, and they help guide you on your path. So they do a couple of different ceremonies with you and practices to help you figure out what path are you going to be. Are you going to be with Oshun? Are you going to be with another god? And how are you going to set up your altar? And what colors do you need to have? So they will help guide you and tell you what you need to do to get on your path.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Sounds like you really got to see a lot of like the main culture there and not just like the touristy parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. When we were in that alleyway, there's a little cool stand when you get in there. It's like you walk through this, not fence, but it feels like a fence. You're definitely walking through somewhere. And I think you feel it. It's different than walking into the door of your house. It's like you have crossed a threshold. And it's very big for them when you go through the threshold that you just kind of like are protecting yourself from bad spirits. So there's a little shop where you can go and purchase like dolls that are all related to the gods or the spirits. And there's also this little, I think it's called ashe is what they called it. It's like chalk paste almost. And you can put it on the bottoms of your feet and on the backs of your neck. And it protects you from evil energy or from bad energy. And it's made out of eggshells. It's like crushed eggshells into like a paste, a very chalky paste. So yeah, put it on the bottom of your shoe. We put it on the bottom or the back of our necks. And we were like, we're good to go. No bad vibes today.
That's awesome. I could use some of that.
Yeah.
I go crush up some eggs real quick.
Exact eggshells.
Eggshells. Correct.
Yeah, we don't want crushed eggs on our That's awesome. What are some other like just really cool things that you guys experienced while you were there that you think the listeners should check out if they ever get to go?
Yeah, so the really cool thing about Cuba is we went there because we wanted like a very vintage Hispanic islandy feel, and that's exactly what it delivered. So with that, there's a lot of different historical places you could go to. If you are of the academic route, you can go and see like Ernest Hemingway inspired venues. If you are following like history and you want to know a little bit more about the politics of Cuba, you can find a lot of cool places where Che or Fidel were at, including a little bar where they both met in Old Havana, as well as the Buena Vista Social Club. So I definitely recommend that for any music goers. The Buena Vista Social Club is the place to be on the weekend. And everybody told us if you're going to go, you need to make a reservation ahead of time because it will be very hard to get entry if you just show up. So the Buena Vista Social Club is where you can find, or where you still find a lot of up and coming Cuban artists. Some very well-known Cuban artists are there, and they deliver. They deliver on the jazz front, you know, that very like drummy kind of sultry Cuban music that you're used to that has some good rhythm to it. And there have been many people who came from the Buena Vista Social Club and have gone on to other things, including a group named after the venue, Buena Vista Social Club. So yeah, that is definitely a place to go if you're interested in live music, that Cuban jazz environment. You can get some drinks and just kind of like dance, watch people dance. It's a very, very hip, kind of like hip but laid back environment.
Did you do any of the Hemingway stuff?
We didn't do Hemingway. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. We did go by the bar. Let me see. I think I have the name of that bar.
The Floridita?
So we did go by the Floridita. 1 second.
She says that so nicely. Floridita.
The Floridita.
I don't think I can say that as nicely.
I was trying.
And we went to, what was the other bar we went to? There was another bar down the street. It's like the Pineapple of Gold or the Pineapple of Silver. It's right on the opposite end of the street from the Floridita. So I definitely recommend going to either of those two and just kind of like being in that little area. You can just see so many people walking around and you're across from these beautiful hotels. So yeah, if you're on the corner of the Floridita, and that bar has been in a couple of works of historical fiction too, I think that's a really good place to be.
Cool. Then he has a farm there somewhere, right? That's
Hemingway?
Yeah.
I'm sure he does. I think if I could go back and do it over again, I would definitely want to see more Hemingway.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's awesome.
I'm a big Hemingway fan, so I would have to do that if I went there. I'd have to go see all the Hemingway stuff.
Definitely, definitely. I also recommend since we were there for 4 days, each day we kind of did something different. One of the days we went over to a place called Faro Castillo del Moro, and it's like a little island jetty that's connected to Cuba by a bridge. And so we took a cab over there. And the reason it caught our eye is because we saw Christ the Redeemer, or something that looked like Christ the Redeemer, on the hilltop. So we went across, we found the Christ the Redeemer, which is actually called Christ in Havana. And it's just a huge white Christ, the same way you would think of in Brazil, with his hands outstretched. And across from him on that same hilltop is Che Guevara's house.
That's cool.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And it was under construction at the time. I don't know if it is at this point, but you could always just look at it and you're going to know it's Che's house because it literally says Che on it.
Is it available for tours or?
No, there's people out there telling you at the time saying that it was closed, so we couldn't do any tours. If it is okay now to go and do it, I'm sure that somebody would be up there to tell you yes or no, you can or you can't. But we didn't see any like bookings for that particular house before we even got up to that hilltop.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I know you said you did like a lot of research before you went.
Mm-hmm.
But also it seems like just in the few months since you've went, a lot has changed and maybe modified itself a lot. Do you suggest that people who are interested in going do a lot of research now, like take the time? Or is it kind of like, do you feel rushed for people to kind of go in order to enjoy it now?
You never know what's going to happen with the state of the foreign affairs. So I would definitely say if you're planning on going to Cuba, do it soon, just in case anything changes. You will know that you had that window and you took it. I have a feeling even with this 3 months that passed, the restriction has come down to just going into Havana as opposed to other areas. So I feel like the way that it's going, maybe that it would be closed off. Who knows what that future really holds. So again, I definitely recommend going sooner rather than later, just because you don't know what that climate's going to be like in the next couple of months or year.
For sure.
Were you able to go in and what was it called? Helping the Cuban people? Is that what you call it? Support for the Cuban people, yes. Were you able to go in and do that before the Obama administration loosened up the reins? Do you know that? Was that an option then, or was it even more restrictive then?
I don't know how restrictive it was before the Obama administration allowed the transportation to Cuba. I'm not sure if you needed a visa or not during that time, because we literally didn't start looking at it until a couple of months before my birthday.
Okay.
And at that point, we were just looking at we didn't even know that Cuba had so many restrictions on it until we had literally booked the flight. And then we thought, oh my God, how are we even going to get there?
Yes.
So it made us go and look at everything.
I love it.
Because I think it had some of the same type of things, and there was a couple of caveats that you could go in for, but I think that was kind of it. And I don't know if the support for the Cuban people was one of them then or not.
Yeah, and I feel like what people were traveling under was like humanitarian projects beforehand.
Yeah.
I feel like it was around because when we were watching people talk about this before our trip, they were saying, well, you could use this in the past. So I feel like it was an option. And a lot of people would do journalism, but then given the climate, the political climate, people started shying away from it because Cuba didn't really want people to come over and paint a picture of them in a negative light under a journalism visa.
So now, rather than later.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
soon.
I also recommend,
Go on.
I also recommend just if you can go into the Plaza de Revolucion, because you can actually see the Che art installation on the side of the wall there. And they have all the cool classic cars with their tops down for you to take a picture of.
And how do you spell Che? Is it S-H-E-A, C-H-E-A?
C-H-E.
C-H-E, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you had to pick one thing, what would your absolutely favorite thing about the trip be?
Wow, that is hard. For me, it was definitely going up to the Faro Castillo del Moro, that little island jetty, because yes, you got to see Christ in Havana, you got to see Che's house, but if you turned around, you got a whole 360 view of what Cuba looks like. Just the entire city, and it's beautiful.
Very nice.
That is awesome.
I like that.
Very cool. What do you suggest for our listeners who are maybe thinking about it, weighing on it, what do you think that they should do first? Do you think that they should, try to find a hotel or try to book their flight or
Visas?
the visas, like where do they start?
I think that for me, I always start with the flight. So I think that's, well, for this trip particularly, the most heavy when it comes to the finances. So definitely book your flight early. Make sure that what's going to work for you, how you're going to get there, because you might need to connect to one of those 4 airports. So just plan ahead for booking that flight and knowing you have to go through those terminals. And at that point, I would start doing some calculations on where you want to stay. For us, we stayed at Casa Manrique, which was very much like an Airbnb, but there was a lady at the house again there the entire time. And we shared the house. We had our own room, of course, but it was really cool how they did it. There was a little open courtyard area in the actual house. And then we were like in a row of rooms where we were one of 4, all kind of next to each other, but we had a lot of privacy. So we stayed near Old Havana. It was walking distance, but we were also close enough to everything else that we could walk to the port or we could walk to the other side of the city. And we weren't too far away from anything important to us, really. We only took a taxi a couple of times to get to the airport, the Plaza de Revolucion, and to get to Faro de Castillo de Moro. But besides that, everything else was walkable. So kind of look at the map. I would say orient yourself in advance and know that Old Cuba is by the port of Havana. So that's where you might want to be closest to. And then go from there. The prices for these rentals are extremely affordable. No matter what kind of income bracket you're in, you can afford to stay at these places and kind of live luxuriously in Cuba.
Very cool.
I love it.
So really, once you get there, it's the traveling to get there that can be costly. But once you get there.
Yeah, getting there and the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Or what I hear,
Exactly.
they're the most expensive things.
And just depending on how much you spend, kind of like take a moment to do a little bit of introspection on yourself. How much do I usually spend a day traveling, and what do I buy? Do I buy food? Do I get Ubers? What is it that I'm purchasing? So you can kind of think in advance for that budget. And for us, again, we took like maybe 2 taxis a day. They each accounted for maybe $30. We ate and the food was very inexpensive because we had breakfast in the morning. So that was another maybe $30 for 2 people. If you're traveling alone, even better for you. You can cut the budget in half. And besides that, we would just buy a knickknack here and there. So literally less than $100 a day for us in additional expenses.
So that's what I was going to ask you too. So you think you get by on $30-$40 cab fare a day?
Yeah, I definitely think you could, but you have to be a walker, because if you are not a walker and you are clearly American, you're going to have a taxi driver probably come and try to raise a rate on you.
Gotcha.
So yeah, be a walker, take less money. If you're not a walker, bring a little bit more for that cab budget.
Okay.
So then if you are going to take cabs a lot, then you need to be tipping a lot, right? So it's going to raise your amount.
Yeah, I would definitely bring, again, cab budget is going to raise you. So whenever you think you're going to be in a cab, just bring some extra money. Bring like $15 for every cab ride you think you're going to need.
Mm-hmm.
And if you plan on going on any trips that are outside of Havana, like if you go to Vinales, where they actually do the manufacturing of the cigars, that I believe is a whole day excursion where they drive you out and bring you back in. So that is a whole probably $100 in itself that you want to keep aside just for that trip, whether you eat or not while you're there.
Okay.
Very cool.
Okay. Well, I think that kind of wraps up our interview for right now. Now we're going to move on to our segments. So our first segment is Don't Do That. And the Don't Do That is a travel mistake that you have made somewhere along the road that you would like to share with our listeners so they can not make the same mistake.
Okay, so specifically for Cuba or anything?
It can be anything, actually. No, you can do anything you want.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely in Cuba. Like my mindset is in Cuba right now. So I can tell you for sure, always look at the money you're trading with people on the street, because if they have another currency, you want to make sure you know that you're getting the right change. I mean, the right change in general. Don't kind of give anybody the benefit of the doubt, but specifically inspect your currency if you know that there's multiple currencies in that area.
Absolutely.
Very good tip.
Yeah.
And then even if you're using CUC, you need to make sure you're getting the right change back, right?
Exactly. You have to kind of know conversion wise. Yeah, your phone's not going to work for Wi-Fi, but it could be your calculator for conversions. So just keep that in mind that you want to get the right change at all times. And as far as comfort and choosing um, your your home and board, I would definitely suggest thinking about what makes you more comfortable, whether you want to be in a hotel around people who maybe could assist you if you need it, or if you are really that independent traveler who could do good with an Airbnb by yourself. So, like for me, if I had booked an Airbnb, I probably would have shot myself in the foot because I would have been very upset not having a Wi-Fi card, nobody that could help us hail a cab if needed. So I feel like the people that I have talked to, they've all kind of booked these little hostels or hotels, full on hotels. And I would definitely recommend doing that to avoid the travel mistake where you don't have anybody that you could ask for assistance.
I was kind of leaning towards the Airbnb thing, but after talking to you during this interview, I think you're right. And I think you need to have some kind of a support system in place, don't you think?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Unless
Definitely.
you have a friend there who's really going to look out for you. And I know one of my really close friends had gone to Cuba a couple of months before me, and she had booked one of those like 3-day, 4-day excursions where they had somebody coming to them every day to take them somewhere. So if you have something like that, I mean, just really gauge what you're comfortable with. I just personally, looking at everything that I've been through with Airbnb, and I still use them just here in the States, I would not want to do it in a place like Cuba where
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have that support.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking is too, I'm not bilingual. I don't speak Spanish. I know like very broken Spanish, so it'd be really nice for people who don't to have that kind of comfort. Like, okay, at least I know someone's coming to take me where I need to go.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to
Yeah.
navigate that on my own. Would be nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And most people there, they will talk to you in English, even if their English is broken, but they will make the attempt. It's just you want to be prepared. And I think you're absolutely right. You don't want to be in that position without anybody to communicate with.
For sure.
So I can get by even if I can't speak any Spanish, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. They'll talk to you in English. They'll probably want you to pay for something, but they will talk
Right.
to you in English.
That's awesome.
Okay. Our last segment is the hidden gem. And
Okay.
today's hidden gem is a place that you have been that's off the beaten path that you could kind of share that maybe people, if they're traveling in the area, might be able to go check out. And this, again, can be Cuba or anywhere in the world that you like.
Gotcha. I'm going to stick with Cuba just to keep everybody kind of on the Cuba train. So there's a place there called Fusterlandia, and it's not necessarily that you have to go through the woods to get there or anything like that. It's just not close to Old Havana. It's the other direction.
Okay.
And Fusterlandia is like a big art park. I mean, some people might see it online or see pictures of it and think like, oh, that looks like a scrap yard with sculptures. But the reason it's there is because it's a dedication to the artist Gaudi from Spain. So if you're even at all interested in art and you understand Gaudi and how he was like very just different and eccentric, and the stuff that he would build was very colorful, and it was just always kind of like in your face in a nice way. Busterlandia is the place for you, and it's definitely an opportunity for you to take some awesome Instagram pictures too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds wonderful.
So it sounds like you really enjoy the art. Is that what your main focus was on your trip?
I think so. It's never my main focus, but I always gravitate towards it
Yeah.
because just come to find that we love like arts, culture, museums, plays, just the idea of the humanities wherever we go.
Yeah. I like that.
I love that too. It seems so rich there in Cuba. That'd be easy to find.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, every Sunday in that Callejon de Hamel where they have the walking religion tour, they actually do like a get together of musicians and they have a little street performance every Sunday at noon. And we went there to kind of see what it was about, and it was packed. You got there and there are people who were playing underneath like this tarp that had nothing but plants on it, and it was hot that day, but they had a nice breeze under there. So get there early if you plan to go to that, so you can get good seating, get in the shade, and you just watch artists literally play the drums, do a lot of different rhythmic beats, and people get up and they dance to it, locals and visitors alike.
Very cool.
That sounds wonderful.
Nice.
Love it.
Okay, so if people want to find out more about you or want to talk to you or something, where can people find you?
They can follow me on Instagram. I'm active on my own personal one on Amanda_Maregente. It's my last name, Maregente. And you can always follow me. It's a completely public page. I respond pretty quickly there. And I have every place I've been to on there. So I definitely recommend following me there first. I also run a blog on mytrendingstories.com. And if you just do My Trending Stories, Amanda Maregente, you will find me.
Perfect. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate all your time and all your facts and all your help that you gave us.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
We would definitely be lost on this one without you.
Yes.
We didn't know anything about Cuba, so
Yeah.
we learned a lot.
Well, you guys go sooner rather than later.
Definitely.
You've definitely inspired us. Definitely have been on an information hunt.
Yeah.
Since we've met you, but it does seem like we need to speed that up a little bit. Yep. So, and hopefully our listeners out there, they probably are feeling the same. They're going to go as well. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate it, guys.
Cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that was Amanda Maregente.
Good job. I like that. You did good.
I think I'm saying it right. Please forgive me if I'm not, Amanda.
I should understand.
So that show was amazing.
Yeah. A lot of that information is stuff that you're not going to find just online, Googling.
Yeah. There's lots of good tips in that one. And I'm a big fan of Cuba in general. I've always wanted to go to Cuba. I always thought that it was like the forbidden land.
Well, it's kind of like a time capsule, too.
And it's like a time capsule there. They got the cars from the 50s, old hotels. People still actually go outdoors and play soccer in the streets and
experience life.
And experience real life. And they don't have their face shoved into a smartphone 24/7.
Yeah, I love it. So if any of you are going to go on a trip there in the near future.
If you're going to go recently. Maybe give us a call and tell us about
it. Yeah, just let us know. Send us an email or message us on Facebook and let us know.
And we are definitely going to try to go. So if there's anybody out there that wants to go to Cuba, hit us up at the nomadictravelerpodcast at gmail.com. Maybe we can carpool.
Yeah, especially if you know Spanish.
So, especially if you if you know Spanish and you want to go with us, that would be fantastic. We know no Spanish.
Hey, I know some.
And we're afraid we're going to get lost. No.
I know sandals.
Well, how do you say sandals? Sandales?
Chanclas.
Chaclas?
Chanclas.
Chanclas.
¿Dónde estás chanclas? Where are your sandals?
If Nicole is saying that right, please let us know at nomadictravelerpodcast at gmail.com.
Please do.
Somehow I have some doubts, but we'll let it slide for right now.
Yeah, so that was a great episode. You guys are going to, hopefully get some good information you guys got from that.
Yeah. And we got lots of more good stuff coming up. If you or anyone you know might like to come on the show, please let us know at nomadictravelerpodcast at gmail.com. We do what's called a meet and greet. So we would give you a call up. We would talk to you and chit-chat with you a little bit, see what your thing is, see if maybe we can, form some kind of an episode around it, and you might be on the Nomadic Traveler Podcast.
Yeah. I'd love to have you.
And please like us and leave us reviews on social media accounts, our Twitter and our Facebook. Our Twitter is, what is it? At Nomadic Podcast is the Twitter handle. And Facebook is the Nomadic Traveler Podcast at Podcasts Everywhere, I think is what it is.
Yes. And then also just on iTunes itself or anything that you're listening on, you can leave us a review. Yeah, reviews on there as well. We love to hear your information and see what you guys want, what you like and what you don't like.
Yep. And if you got anything in particular you think would be an awesome idea for a show, please let us know. And we will do our best to accommodate your request.
Yes, because the show is for you.
Yes. So, shout-outs. Where have people been listening to us? Do you even know, Nicole?
I think we've expanded a lot.
We've expanded everywhere. Everybody loves us.
Not everybody.
So, let's see. The biggest one, let's see. Obviously, Germany, we are still doing super strong in Germany. We love you guys in Germany. We still haven't learned how to say anything in German. We will work on that, I promise. But we're getting lots of downloads there, and we really appreciate everyone that's listening. Belgium is a new country we just picked up. Denmark, new country that we just picked up. You guys are awesome. Thank you for listening. Slovakia is new.
Ooh.
Poland is new. Let's see. We had Iran before. India. Let's see. Where was the other one? Cambodia. Cambodia is also new.
Thanks, guys.
So, yes. And we also picked up downloads in Mexico this month. So, and as always, we got all of our listeners in the United States and all of our listeners in Canada and all of our listeners in Australia and New Zealand. Thank you guys, as always. And we actually, just for some fun facts, our strongest downloads are in Germany. So out of everywhere, if you picked like all the states in the United States and you went through and looked at everything, our second strongest is in Florida. So thank you, everybody down in Florida. Our home state of Indiana is kind of slacking, so we're going to have a talk with you guys. But by far, our highest number of downloads on a monthly basis is in Germany. So thank you guys.
Which is awesome.
So
you guys are awesome.
We thought you guys might find that interesting because I sure did.
Same. Yeah.
So anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay.
All right. Till next week.
We'll see you next week.